Mr. Vice President, the President's been very engaged in foreign policy in significant ways that really are quite different than the past, from China, Iran deal, Israel, and so forth. I call it the Trump doctrine. The Trump doctrine's a pretty strong doctrine, isn't it?
Well, we call it America First. Mm-hmm. I mean, after 8 years when Joe Biden was vice president, we had a president apologizing for America on the world stage. In President Donald Trump, we've had a president that's out championing America on the world stage and embracing his role as leader of the free world. You know, when we came into office, we inherited a mess on the foreign stage. ISIS had overrun an area the size of Pennsylvania. Russia was redrawing Europe by force. Syria had used chemical weapons on innocent civilians with no repercussions. North Korea was testing nuclear weapons and firing long-range missiles threatening the United States. And all along the way, China was taking advantage of America economically as they built up their military and their economic influence across the Asia Pacific. President Trump stepped into the breach, stood strong as commander-in-chief. He directed the armed forces of our country. They destroyed the ISIS caliphate, took down their leader without one American casualty. He got us out of the Iran nuclear deal. Iran had gotten $1.8 billion when Joe Biden was vice president of the United States in cash, and they were fomenting violence and terrorism all across the region. President Trump stood up to them, and earlier this year, he gave the order to take down an Iranian general responsible for the death of hundreds of American servicemen and women. And Qasem Soleimani is gone. We stood up to Russia. This president's been tougher on Russia than any president in my lifetime. Sanctions, expelling diplomats. And President Donald Trump, unlike when Joe Biden was vice president, President Trump made Javelin missiles available to Ukraine, tank buster missiles. When the last administration, the Obama-Biden administration, would only send blankets and MREs, military meals, to the Ukraine. We stood with Ukraine to defend their territorial integrity. And through 3 successive summits, now no more nuclear tests in North Korea, no more long-range missiles being fired, no more threats against the United States. And most meaningful to the president and me is I was there in Hawaii when 54 caskets were offloaded, the remains of Korean war heroes that finally came home. So all along the way, this president has stood strong. He's engaged the world. He's engaged leaders in the world. But he stood strong for America's interests and willing to use force, and America's safer as a result.
And Israel and the Middle East?
Well, with regard to Israel, I couldn't be more proud. You got to remember, the last 4 presidents promised the American people and the people of our most cherished ally that we'd recognize their capital. But it was President Donald Trump who moved the American embassy to Jerusalem, the capital of the Jewish state of Israel. He recognized the Golan Heights. And I would tell you, speaking to our friends in Israel, the president's strong stand against Iran, withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal, taking out Qasem Soleimani, everyone believes has created the circumstances where for the first time in 26 years, 2 Arab nations recognize Israel's right to exist. I was watching a town hall that Joe Biden was in about a week or so back, and one of the questioners actually went through that litany, including the outbreak of peace between Arab nations and Israel, and asked if the president deserved any credit. And Joe Biden actually said yes, but then no. I said no, but the truth is, it is yes. President Trump has stood with our allies. He's stood up to our enemies. He's put America first, and America is stronger, and Americans are safer as a result.